In 1840, the fate of Yorubaland stood on a knife's edge. The powerful Fulani-led Ìlọrin army, fueled by jihad and conquest, marched south to capture Òṣogbo, the gateway to the Yoruba heartland. But what they didn't expect was the fierce resistance from Ìbàdàn, led by the legendary war general Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ. This documentary dives deep into the untold story of the Battle of Òṣogbo, where Yoruba warriors rose against a powerful empire to protect their land, their people, and their legacy. From the tactics of the battlefield to the bravery in the forests, this is not just history, it's a war story you'll never forget. Why did Ìlọrin's army want Òṣogbo so badly? How did Ìbàdàn become a military powerhouse? What was the brilliant strategy of Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ and the turning point that stopped the jihadist expansion into southern Yorubaland? You will discover everything in this video. If you're passionate about African history, forgotten wars, and legendary heroes, this is one episode you don't want to miss. They came with the sword of jihad and the fire of conquest, sweeping town after town, declaring every inch of land theirs by divine right. From the north, Ìlọrin had fallen. From the east, kingdoms trembled. And now, the eyes of the Fulani army turned south to Òṣogbo. It was more than just a city. It was the heart of Yoruba resistance. If Òṣogbo fell, the gates to the south would be wide open. But what the invaders didn't expect was Ìbàdàn, a city built by warriors, hardened by exile, forged by fire. Led by the fierce Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ, the Ìbàdàn army marched to meet their fate. This was not just another war, it was survival. And in the forests of Òṣogbo, Yoruba warriors would rise, and history would never forget. In the early decades of the 19th century, the Yoruba world was changing, and not for the better. Once great kingdoms like Oyo were collapsing under the weight of internal conflict and external pressure. As the Oyo Empire crumbled, power began to shift. And from the ruins a new and unexpected threat emerged, one that would send shockwaves across Yorubaland: Ìlọrin. Ìlọrin had once been a Yoruba town under Oyo influence. But in a shocking twist of fate, it had become the stronghold of a Fulani-led jihad. The Fulani cleric Shehu Alimi and his successors had overthrown Yoruba leadership, turning Ìlọrin into a base for Islamic expansion, aligned with the Sokoto Caliphate. From there, the Fulani began a calculated and ruthless push southward. Town after town fell. The goal: expand the reach of Islam and establish political dominance under the banner of jihad. But underneath the religious veil was something darker: a hunger for control, land, and power. By the late 1830s, their eyes were fixed on one critical target: Òṣogbo. Strategically located in the heart of Yorubaland, Òṣogbo was more than a town. It was a symbol. If it fell, the entire southern Yoruba region would be exposed. Towns like Ilesa, Ijebu, and even Lagos would be within reach. But the people of Òṣogbo knew they could not stand alone. That's when a message was sent to Ìbàdàn. Ìbàdàn was a new kind of Yoruba power, founded by warriors and hunters who had fled from fallen Oyo towns like Owu and Egba. It wasn't ruled by kings or priests. It was ruled by warlords, Hardened men of action, men like Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ, who had earned his rank through blood and victory. When word reached Ìbàdàn that Òṣogbo was under threat, the response wasn't a debate, it was a movement. Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ rallied the Ìbàdàn military council. No Yoruba land must fall to jihad, not while Ìbàdàn breathed. They would march, and they would fight. But this would not be like any battle before. The Fulani had cavalry, tactics, and momentum. They were confident, and why not? Every resistance they'd met so far had crumbled. Why would Ìbàdàn be any different? They would soon find out. As the rainy season approached and the forest paths grew muddy and thick with tension, the drums of war echoed through Òṣogbo and Ìbàdàn. Traders whispered of a coming clash. Farmers looked to the skies. Women wept as sons sharpened blades and wrapped charms around their wrists. Something terrible was on the horizon, and when it came, it would change Yoruba history forever. By early 1840, the skies over Òṣogbo grew darker, not just with clouds, but with the dread of invasion. The Fulani Ilorin army was on the move. Leading them was Alimi's son, Abdul Salam, a seasoned commander who believed his army was unstoppable. He marched with cavalry, foot soldiers, and a band of converted Yoruba loyalists, ready to smash through the defenses of Òṣogbo and claim another victory in the name of the Caliphate. Word of the advancing army spread like wildfire. From hunters in the bush to traders in the market, everyone knew Ìlọrin was coming. In Òṣogbo, panic set in. The town was not built for war. Walls were repaired, trenches dug, but the people knew these efforts wouldn't hold back a professional army. Their only hope was Ìbàdàn. And Ìbàdàn didn't disappoint. When Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ received confirmation of Ìlọrin's march, he wasted no time. He called together Ìbàdàn's war council, warriors, lieutenants, spiritualists, and scouts. Every man who mattered in war was there. The plan was simple: march swiftly to Òṣogbo, fortify it, and prepare for battle. No more retreats, no more surrender. Ìlọrin would not pass. As the Ìbàdàn warriors prepared, elders invoked the spirits of Ògún and Ṣàngó. Charms were tied, swords and Dane guns were checked, horses were fed. The forests of Oyo trembled with the sound of men preparing for war. The Ìbàdàn army was no ragtag force. It was a brutal, disciplined machine, hardened by years of survival, betrayal, and internal conflict. These were not pampered princes or ritual priests. These were men who had fought for every inch of their lives, men who had nothing to lose but their pride and their land. Led by Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ, they set out, hundreds of warriors moving through the dense forests and narrow footpaths that led to Òṣogbo. At their rear were younger warriors carrying food, charms, and supplies. At their front, hunters and scouts sniffing out any Ìlọrin ambushes. It wasn't just warriors that moved, it was a tide of vengeance. When they arrived at Òṣogbo, the mood changed. Òṣogbo's people, terrified and broken, lifted their spirits at the sight of Ìbàdàn's warriors marching into their town. Songs broke out, mothers cried, the elders gave blessings. The city stood taller that day. But Ọdẹrìnlọ did not celebrate. He knew what was coming. He gathered his lieutenants and walked the land. He studied the terrain, the streams, the hills, the thick brush that surrounded the town. Every rock, every tree, every narrow path, all could be the key to victory or defeat. Then came the scouts. Ilorin's army had been sighted just days away. They were bigger, they were mounted, and they were confident. But what they didn't know was that İBADAN was ready and Ọdẹrìnlọ was waiting. The air was thick, not with rain, but with fear, with anticipation, with the raw scent of sweat, leather, and gunpowder. From the hills outside Òṣogbo, Ìlọrin's army appeared, a sea of banners, horses, and armed men moving like a wave. Their cavalry shimmered in the sun, proud and lethal. They had conquered many towns. They believed Òṣogbo would fall like the rest. But Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ had other plans. He didn't wait for the enemy to knock on Òṣogbo's gates. No, he took the fight to them. Ọdẹrìnlọ was no ordinary commander. He understood the land like a hunter tracks prey. He divided his forces. One unit would remain within Òṣogbo, guarding civilians and acting as reserve. Another, the strike force, would move into the forests, using the dense terrain to ambush and confuse Ìlọrin's forces. A third group, smaller but brutal, would loop around and strike the rear of the enemy once they were fully engaged. The key: surprise, speed, and local terrain. And then it began. As Ìlọrin's army approached, confident and arrogant, they began to slow near a narrow forest path outside the town. That was the mistake Ọdẹrìnlọ had prayed for. İBADAN warriors erupted from the trees with chilling war cries. Ole ku, ah ole ku, we shall not die, we shall not die. Muskets fired, spears flew, arrows rained down from the bush. Ìlọrin's front ranks broke into confusion. The cavalry tried to maneuver, but the trees were too thick. Horses reared, riders fell, panic spread like fire. But it was just the beginning. As Ìlọrin troops pulled back to regroup, Ọdẹrìnlọ's rear unit struck. From behind, they attacked like angry hornets, cutting down confused soldiers and blocking escape routes. What followed was not a clean battle, it was chaos. Blades clashed with cries and screams. Men wrestled in mud, biting, stabbing, clawing. Blood soaked into the roots of trees. Ìlọrin fighters tried to rally, but the jungle worked against them. Horses couldn't charge. Guns misfired in the wet. İBADAN warriors moved like shadows, appearing, killing, vanishing. Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ himself was on the front line. Not behind a tent, not giving orders from afar. He fought shoulder to shoulder with his men. His war charm glowed on his chest. His blade was never dry. The turning point came when the Ìlọrin commander, Alimi's son, was wounded. His horse shot under him, his guards falling one by one. He tried to rally the retreat, but İBADAN pressed harder. One by one, Ìlọrin's troops broke. They tried to flee back north, but the escape paths were blocked. Some scattered into the forest and were never seen again. Some were hunted, others surrendered. By sunset, the forest outside Òṣogbo was silent, except for the groans of the dying. And Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ stood victorious. When the last sword fell silent and the smoke cleared above the blood-stained earth, it was İBADAN's drums that echoed across Òṣogbo, not Ìlọrin's call to conquest. The forest outside the town had become a graveyard for hundreds of Fulani fighters. Their horses lay twisted, their banners were torn, and their dreams of southern domination scattered like ash. Inside Oshogbo, there was silence at first. Then, cries of joy, praise songs, tears. Elders beat the talking drum. Mothers hugged their sons. Children ran barefoot in the streets. Oshogbo had survived. And not just survived, it had defied a caliphate. The name Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ became a legend that day. He didn't just win a battle. He shattered the illusion that the Fulani jihad could not be stopped. He didn't just defend a town, he defended the very soul of Yoruba land. To many, Ọdẹrìnlọ became the embodiment of Yoruba resistance, brave, ruthless, brilliant in strategy, and loyal to the land that birthed him. Oshogbo named songs after him. Ìbàdàn raised his status, and the tale of that battle was passed from griots to grandchildren. But beyond the celebration, the Battle of Oshogbo rearranged power in the region. Ìlọrin's advance was permanently halted. They never pushed that deep into the south again. Ìbàdàn, already growing in power, became the unquestioned military capital of Yoruba land. Other towns from Ìjẹ̀bú to Ẹ̀gbá to Ondo began to look to Ìbàdàn not just for defense, but for leadership. This marked the rise of a new Yoruba power structure, not built on ancient kingship or rituals, but on the sword, on strategy, and on survival. The Battle of Oshogbo may not appear in every textbook. It may not be as famous as Waterloo or Hastings, but in the heart of Nigeria, among the Yoruba people, it remains one of the most important battles ever fought. It was not a battle for territory alone. It was for identity, culture, religion, and legacy. It was the day a town stood between empire and freedom and said, "Not today." And so, in the shadowed forests of Oshogbo, a storm came and was turned away, not by numbers, not by chance, but by courage. Tell us, did you already know this story? Do you think Balógun Ọdẹrìnlọ deserves a statue in the center of Ìbàdàn today? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if this story moved you, give it a like, share with someone who needs to know their history, and subscribe for more epic African battles. This was the Battle of Oshogbo, told by the tales of the ancestors.